So things get really deep when you look into the tiny hats and slavery. Yes, this was left out of the history books because guess who owns the history books? Those tiny hats over here. And when we look at who owned all the slaves and were the slave traders and the auctioneers, tiny hats. And who owned the newspapers, tiny hats. And then who also created the division. Oh, I think you're starting to understand it. And then you also find about the exploitation of the slaves and how they treated people. Obviously, they're not going to tell anybody this part. And then it also gets interesting when you find out that the tiny hats were defending that they should stay slaves. Isn't that interesting? And people would say, no, that would never happen, really. Slave dealing was an extremely profitable business. And this is where it always ties back to the Rothschilds, like I've always talked about. Even Malcolm X talked about this. People should look into this.
And a Negro is not anti-Semitic when he says that the man who's exploiting him in his community is white, because it is a white man who owns all the stores. Now, is it an accident that these whites who own these stores are Jewish? If it's an accident, then the fact that he says the Jew on the corner is exploiting me isn't an anti-Semitic statement. It's just more descriptive of the man who's exploiting him.
So today we're going to talk about Christopher Columbus and some hidden history from The International Jew by Henry Ford. Did you know in 1492 more than 300,000 Jews were expelled from Spain and came to America? Then it gets a little deeper when you find out who owns all the social media, and then who also owns the tobacco industry, the cotton industry, the banking industry, the theater, the newspaper, the radio, and then we can clearly see who owns the government as well. Now someone's going to come in there and say, oh, this is anti-Semitic. That's the same thing you always hear, so that you don't question what's actually happening in your country. It gets deeper when you find out that the pioneers of LGBTQ45, same people. And a lot of people don't know this is going on because these people are always changing their names. Phoenicians, Venetians, Khazarians, Bolsheviks, Zionists, Communists, and it goes on. And someone's going to ask, why were they changing their names? Well, because if you tracked it back to slavery and you found out who actually brought the slaves, it kind of gives you a different story. Really gives you a different story, that's for sure. Then it gets deeper when you find out who did the first plastic surgeries, so that people can blend in. Then it gets deeper when you talk about Palestine and the takeover of that with the Rothschilds, same people. And the whole Palestine thing connects back to the Rothschilds, who were the bankers, who then control everything, including the schools. And this is why in school, things like reading the Bible, praying, celebrating Christmas, gotta get rid of all that. Then it gets deeper when you find out who brought in all the liquor and all the drugs, and also made people into drunks during the Great Depression, because the same people caused the Great Depression. And this book was written in 1921, so we have been hijacked for a long period of time, especially when all the media and the newspapers and the radios are owned by a small group of people who control everything, kind of like what we see today. So on that note, here's some things you might want to look into, and also maybe why we gave another country $133 billion when they've been lying to us the entire time. I don't know. Have a great day.